Good evening. This is your United States Congressman Van Taylor calling to invite you to participate in my live telephone town hall meeting, which is here right now. And I know every single person who's getting on this call right now has a busy schedule. There are a lot of other things you could be doing on this Thursday night, but I want to thank you for participating. Democracy works best when the people are engaged, and I appreciate your willingness to share your thoughts to help me represent you in the United States Congress. This call is focused on Winter Storm Uri and the recovery efforts, and we've got some great people on the call to help you. If you have a question at any point, just hit *3 on your phone, and you'll go to one of my operators, actually my staff. Most of these people are staff that work for me, work for you in your congressional office in Plano. They'll take your information down, and then they'll put you back on the call, so you won't miss anything. And when we get to your question, I'll call on you, and then you can ask your question, and you can ask it of me, your Congressman Van Taylor. You can ask it of we have a great representative from Fema, Juan Ayala. We have a representative from the Small Business Administration, Sushil Kumar, and then we also have our very own State Representative Matt Shaheen from House District 66. So we've got some great people here to kind of give you a multifaceted answers, because this is a complicated recovery effort, and we've gotten a lot of really great questions. A lot of people want to be part of this, so thank you for taking your time. So right now, what's going on is we're calling 50,000 households across the 3rd District of Texas, which is most of Collin County. And if you've got a question, hit *3. We'll take you offline, get your question, put you back in, and you can listen and hear it. And our phone lines are open right now, so feel free to press *3. Just a quick bit about myself. I'm Van Taylor. I'm your U.S. Congressman. I'm a 7th-generation Texan. I was a Marine. I served in Iraq, led a platoon of U.S. Marines there. And I served in the Texas legislature, first in the Texas House and then the Texas Senate. I am now in my 2nd term in the United States House of Representatives, and I am inspired to serve my country, or my 3 little girls, Laura, Helen, and Susie, to make sure that they have a great opportunity, just like I want all the children of the 3rd District in this great country of ours, this great United States of America, to have the kind of opportunity that we had for our country. So for those of you who just joined us, and we are having literally hundreds of people join this call as I'm speaking to you, you are joining a live telephone town hall meeting. I'm Van Taylor. I'm your United States Congressman, and want to let you know, if you're interested in being on another telephone town hall meeting, you can just push 1 on your phone right now. So just push 1 on your phone right now, and we will put you down to be on and that way we know to be sure to send you an email to let you know when our next telephone town hall meeting is. And I have several of these over the course of a year to go over various topics. We had a lot during the COVID when we were going through the height of the COVID pandemic. Right now, this is focused on Winter Storm Uri, which hit our state last month, and I have listened to many stories from neighbors, talking to friends and strangers alike, who people who drove long distances to deliver firewood and supplies, as well as local volunteers who packed meals to make sure that elderly people had something to eat, and talking to people who went down the street every day to check on their neighbors to make sure that they were okay. And while our communities continue to rebuild together, it's important to acknowledge the glaring failure of our state's power grid. It was really completely unacceptable to me and to everyone who I've spoken to. I don't think anybody was happy about what happened, and I am committed. And I know that State Representative Matt Shaheen and our legislators from Collin County are very committed to make sure this never happens again. And I want to make sure that you have the correct information to go through the recovery process, which is why I'm joined today by State Representative Matt Shaheen, as well as our FEMA Representative Juan Ayala, and then our Sba Representative Sushil Kumar. With that, I'd like to and then what I'm going to do, just to give you a quick overview, I'm going to have State Representative Shaheen talk for 3 minutes. I'm going to hand it over for 4 minutes, and then I'm going to have Sushil is going to talk for 3 minutes, and then Juan from Fema is going to talk for 3 minutes, and then we'll go into questions and answers. And so with that, State Representative Matt Shaheen from House District 66, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Congressman. Thanks for having me on another teletown hall. I enjoy doing these, and it really is just a great opportunity for both you and I to talk to our constituents and engage real time with them. And obviously, we know that on top of everybody's mind right now is what happened several weeks ago, where we had significant power outages in the state of Texas. It was unlike any event that had ever occurred in our state's history. And what I want everybody to know is that the legislative body went into action right away. It was just a short 2 weeks afterwards that we held significant committee hearings to determine what exactly happened. So I'm a member of the State Affairs Committee, which has oversight over utilities, both generation and distribution in the retail portions, as well as we have oversight over ERCOT, which I think everybody understands now, the entity that manages the Texas grid, as well as the Public Utility Commission. And so we held literally 26 hours of hearings listening to different individuals. And the intent at that time was to find out what exactly happened, what were the failure points. And let me just try to summarize those real briefly, and I'll share in a pretty brief statement what we are doing, and then I want to just listen to the others and then open it up for questions. But essentially what we determined is that there was a couple of different failure points. The main failure point was that the Public Utility Commission had ordered that all of the utility companies in the state of Texas have what's called an emergency operation plan. That's a fancy word for a disaster recovery plan. So they needed to have plans in place to anticipate these kind of events, extreme weather events, as well as other things like earthquakes, hurricanes, even pandemics. And so they were supposed to have plans in place to anticipate these types of events, and they were supposed to simulate those plans or test those plans. And those emergency operation plans fell short. We heard stories about lack of winterization, right? If they had sufficiently tested those operating plans, that would have been uncovered years in advance. There was, believe it or not, there were supplies of gas to the power plants that provide the gas that actually turns the turbines that generate the electricity. The electricity to those gas companies was shut off. And so it just compounded the problem. So over a period of hours, all the power plants throughout the state of Texas, for different reasons, some that I mentioned there, and just some of them they couldn't handle the critical cold, they started shutting down. And so the power plants just started coming offline, and that put our grid at risk. And so ERCOT was ordering the different utility companies throughout the state of Texas to start shedding power. Otherwise, we would have lost our grid. One of the things that we also found out is that, believe it or not, the Texas grid almost shut down completely. We were just minutes away from that happening. If that had happened, if the grid had completely shut down, Texas could have been without power for weeks. It would have been just a devastating event. So after that testimony, and I heard from many constituents, we opened up a portal. We received written correspondence from our constituents. Over 60 individuals used that portal. Of course, we got emails and phone calls. So we have different pieces of legislation. Believe it or not, I'm down at the Capitol right now. We actually just voted some of this legislation out of committee. So they will be on their way to the floor for more debate and amendment and final passage. But we have legislation to restructure ERCOT. And that's the entity that manages our grid. One of the things that we found out is some of their board members are actually outside the state of Texas. So one of the provisions in that legislation is make sure that they're in the state of Texas. We're going to establish a Texas Disaster Reliability Council to better manage emergencies. I'm sure many of the people listening to me right now were very unhappy with the communications. I know I was. The communications were totally insufficient. and we lacked an alert system statewide to better communicate. So those are going to be put in place. And then I'm personally working on legislation to strengthen these emergency operation plans, make sure they're sufficient, make sure that they're audited, and make sure that they're simulated and tested so that any types of issues that we have, right, they're uncovered, not in a disaster like that we had a couple of weeks ago, but in the planning and the testing and the like. So know that the legislature is taking this obviously very serious. We're taking steps to ensure that there's no statewide blackout that occurs like happened several weeks ago. And we're active, we're taking action, and I'm looking forward to your questions and giving further updates. And thanks again, Congressman Van Taylor.
Hey, Matt, thank you. We really appreciate having you on. And folks, the reason that I asked Representative Shaheen on here is because he sits on the State Affairs Committee in the Texas House of Representatives. He has been through scores of hours of hearing. He's working on the legislation, so he's really one of the legislator closest to this situation and trying to solve it and understand it. And I think he did a good job of explaining. Texas has 76 gigawatts of thermal generation, so nuclear coal and gas generation. We lost 26 gigawatts in a 6-hour period, which really crippled our state's ability. I wish I could tell you that this is a unique experience nationally. Other states like California have had rolling blackouts. So this is. But we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen again, that we're never going to go through this situation again. But as we think about recovering, the Small Business Administration has a really important role, and that's why I asked one of the experts from the SBA, Sushil Kumar, to come on tonight and just take a couple minutes to explain what resources are available. Before you start, I just want to encourage anybody that has a question, and you just heard Matt Shaheen give a really good explanation of what's going on at the state level. If you have questions about what happened, what he's going to do, the state response, hit *3 on your phone. Hit *3 right now. We'll take you offline. You can put your question in. You'll come back onto the call, and then that way, and we'll answer as many of these questions that come in as possible. So, Sushil, the floor is yours for the next 3 minutes.
Congressman, perhaps may I suggest that Juan, my FEMA partner, goes first because the sequence of delivery requires a registration with FEMA first. So if you have no objections,
no objection at all. Yeah, absolutely. Juan, so we're going to have Juan from FEMA go next. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you very much, Congressman, and it's great to be with you all this evening, Representative Shaheen and my colleague Sushil at the SBA. My name is Juan Ayala, and I work for the Federal Emergency Management Agency here in Texas. On February 19th, President Biden approved a major disaster declaration for Texas, which currently authorizes FEMA's Individual Assistance Program be made available in 126 counties, including Collin County. And what that means is that individuals in all of these counties whose homes incurred damage as a result of the storm and whose homes are uninsured or underinsured can file for direct federal assistance with FEMA. Since that declaration, more than $95 million in assistance has been approved for survivors in Texas. FEMA may be able to provide financial assistance for temporary lodging during the incident period and certain home repairs, such as costs associated with burst pipes, damage to electrical and ventilation systems, major appliances, and more. We do want to remind folks that FEMA is not a substitute for insurance and cannot pay for all those losses caused by a disaster. FEMA's programs are not designed to make you whole, but rather to return your home to a safe, sanitary, and functional condition. By law, FEMA cannot duplicate benefits paid out by insurance. So we recommend that all residents whose homes have incurred damages file a claim with their insurance before applying with FEMA. The easiest way to apply for assistance is to go to disasterassistance.gov, which is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then selecting Apply Online. And we want to remind people to please be sure to select that the cause of damage is snow and ice and not flooding. It is also possible to register over the phone by calling 1-800-621-3362 from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Central, 7 days a week. When applying for federal assistance, please pay special attention to question number 24 about people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs. Answer yes to this question if you have a disability, special need, or another health or medical condition. This is the best way to note any additional disability-related losses and or needs, such as medical support assistance, durable medical equipment repairs, or replacement of assistive technology that was lost or damaged because of the disaster. Examples might be things like wheelchairs, a scooter, a walker, a CPAP machine, and other devices. Because of the COVID environment, FEMA will be conducting virtual home inspections for applicants who report damage to their homes. We can use the latest technology such as Apple's FaceTime or Zoom video communications. Our inspectors are trained to assist people in downloading and utilizing the Zoom application. For those applicants who do not have the ability to utilize this technology, it will be possible to speak to an inspector over the phone, and they will guide you through a series of questions to help you evaluate the damage. And if that is not going to work for an individual, in extreme situations, we can actually work to dispatch an inspector to your home to carry out the inspection. It is important to note that FEMA does not provide assistance for energy price spikes or to address utility bills, and that FEMA cannot reimburse for food loss due to a power failure. There are voluntary organizations in many communities that may be able to assist with those losses, and residents are encouraged to call 211 for assistance with those problems. We also want to make sure that people are watchful for scams, which are on the rise out there. Unfortunately, in these times, while we see the best in people, and then sometimes, unfortunately, we see the worst as well. So we want to make sure that people are wary of potential fraud. We want to make sure that you don't offer financial information over the phone, and that you know who you are dealing with, and always ask for identification. Please remember that FEMA personnel will never ask for payment for services or help. In Texas, contractors are required to provide a notice of cancellation, which gives you the right to change your mind within 3 business days if the transaction occurs in your home. And we always remind folks to get the agreement in writing, read the contract carefully, and never sign a contract with a blank space to be filled in. I have other information I can share when we get to questions, but in the interest of time, I think that will be it for my opening comments, and we'll wait patiently for questions. Thank you very much, Congressman.
Hey, Juan, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. So if you have questions specifically for FEMA, just hit *3, and my operator will take that down, and we will work to if we don't get to your question on this call, we will work to get you an answer and get that to the right person, and then get that back to you. So we will questions that are asked, we will facilitate trying to get that to the right place and get you an answer. If you have a question for State Representative Matt Shaheen, press *3. If you've got a question for me, Van Taylor, your U.S. Congressman, hit *3 on your phone right now. Operator will pick it up, take the question, and then we'll put you in the queue. And finally, batting cleanup here is Sushil Kumar from the SBA. Sushil, can you tell us what the SBA can do to help us recover?
Congressman, thank you for your service. Mr. Shaheen, look forward to working with you. My role as the PIO for the Small Business Administration is to share a vital piece of information of how the Small Business Administration assists the rebuilding of the community at the unit level. What do I mean by that? We help renters, homeowners, private nonprofits, including houses of worship, and businesses of all sizes for physical damages and economic injury. This is probably the only time where you'll hear the word small business and homeowners, renters in the same breath, because most people will say, well, what's the small business doing in my business? Well, what we are doing is providing low interest rate disaster loans for up to $40,000 for personal property for not only renters, but also homeowners. So cars are included. And for homeowners, damages against their property up to $200,000, nonprofits up to $2 million, and businesses up to $2 million for a combination of economic injury and physical damages. Here's how the process works for the SBA and for disaster recovery. In every disaster, your first line of defense is insurance, as Juan mentioned, and the program is for the underinsured and the uninsured. Definition of uninsured is pretty obvious. You don't have insurance. Underinsured basically means that even if you have insurance, it doesn't cover the totality of the damages. So if you have a policy for $100,000 and you get a check back for 60, depreciation, exclusions, and deductibles included, we can cover the difference. And in a presidential declaration, the very first step is you register with FEMA and then apply with the SBA. If the SBA is not able to approve your loan, we then refer you back to FEMA's Other Needs Assistance Program. And for those folks who might be hand-wringing and saying, I won't qualify for the SBA, why do I need the SBA? Well, if you don't qualify for the SBA, make it a self-fulfilling prophecy by applying and being turned down. This way you can apply to FEMA's Other Needs Assistance. Separately, for those folks who have insurance and have filed a claim with the insurance company, in my conversation briefly with the TDI yesterday, we talked about a sum of insurance proceeds whereby, in the $100,000 example that I mentioned, a homeowner could technically get the $100,000 up in their pocket and have the insurance company pay down the SBA with no prepayment penalty. Interest rates are fixed, 1.25% over a maximum amortization of 30 years. That applies to renters for $40,000, $2 million for private nonprofits, and $2 million for economic injury. Last but not least, in disaster areas, this is an insidious fact, but 1 in 5 businesses that stay closed for the first 5 days of a disaster have a 90% probability of failure in the first year. So businesses who are on this call, folks who are on this call to advocate for businesses, please make sure they apply for the economic injury disaster loan so that you can borrow the money to pay people, product, and everything else in between that takes the form of working capital. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Representative Shaheen and or Congressman Taylor. Thank you for having me on this call.
Sure, thank you. We really appreciate having some experts here on the call. And if you've got a question for any, myself, your Congressman Van Taylor, for State Representative Matt Shaheen, or for FEMA or the SBA, hit star 3 right now and ask your question. Our first question is actually for Juan with FEMA. We have April from Plano, and April has a question about FEMA's programs. April, are you online?
I applied for FEMA because I was impacted by the storm, and I did receive some money for. I received something from FEMA. I think it was for help me with get into another apartment, but I applied for the damages of my articles in my house that was damaged, and they said I had to go through the SBA before FEMA would cover me for those items. So I applied to the SBA February. I had applied via email because it was, to my understanding, the SBA loan portal was broke to comply online. So I did it via email. I sent my application on the 21st, the 24th, the 25th, and the 27th, and I still have not heard from anyone. I sent the application loan and also that tax document, and I've yet to hear from anyone.
Yes, ma'am. This is Juan with FEMA. I'm going to begin the process of answering your question, then I'm going to pass it to Sushil, who I think can speak to the SBA part of the process. So thank you very much for this question because it highlights really how important it is to follow the whole process because FEMA and SBA work together. So FEMA's Individual Assistance Program is the money you receive from FEMA is a grant. That is money that you do not have to pay back. And we have limited resources, so we try to cover as many people as possible with as much as we can. And then we refer people to the Small Business Administration, as we did, to encourage you to apply with them. Now, with FEMA, there is no credit check, there is no income check in order to receive our grant assistance. But as our assistance is limited and people tend to need more than just what FEMA can provide, we tend to refer people to the Small Business Administration and ask them to apply there as well. So with that process, which is dependent on creditworthiness and your ability to repay back a loan, you have to go through their process, and Sushil can talk about where you are with the process and what he can do to help figure out where your application is. But if any individual who applies with SBA is unable to to get a loan through them, then that qualifies them for further FEMA assistance in the form of grants, which again, you do not have to pay back. So it is a process that we ask people to go through. Again, these are taxpayer dollars that are funding these programs, so we try to be as judicious as we can with them. We provide a certain amount of assistance, and then we refer people to SBA. And then if SBA is not a viable option for them, they can come back to FEMA for additional assistance. And at that, I'll leave it to Sushil to see if you can speak to her application process.
Appreciate the question. Apologies for the problems. We don't have a way to accept an application via email. Disasterloanassistance.sba.gov is the online portal where which we accept loan applications. So if you'd like to give me a call later, we could walk you through the process and have you fill it out online. The phone number for the customer service number is 1-800-659-2955. And for the purposes of this call, area code 916-878-1495, and perhaps a little bit of information gathering in the front, and that'll refer you back to customer service. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, back to you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So Julia from Plano has a question for Representative Shaheen about the ERCOT board members. Julia, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. And
Sure.
I also want to say, Van, thank you for always being very responsive to my messages. I really appreciate that. Matt, wanted to ask, I know you already covered the fact that you guys are going to make sure that the board members are going to have to be residents of Texas. But I also wanted to ask about, are you guys going to look at requirements for utility sector experience and understanding? And then a second part to my question that I didn't mention, but I'd like to ask is, are there any requirements or soon-to-be requirements for Encore to be responsive? It's like they hide behind the Wizard of Oz like curtain, and they never have to return calls or answer a call. So you never know if you're going to get your service restored. And it's very frustrating, especially in the storm we just went through. So I'd like to understand more about accountability for Encore as well.
Hey, Julia, thanks for your message. And yes, with respect to ERCOT and ensuring that the board members actually have the appropriate background, we actually discussed that in committee today. So the piece of legislation that we voted out actually does cover that. So there will be those individuals that are on the ERCOT board are required to have the appropriate type of background, whether it's power generation, whether it's the transmission or distribution of power, and then also the retail component as well. So that way you have different stakeholders that are represented. You also have on the ERCOT board representation of the big energy users as well. So yes, they'll have the appropriate background. That's incredibly important. You know, for Encore, I will tell you that I did receive a significant amount of complaints from them, and there was some difficulty with a lot of the communication that they were providing, and I mean, I experienced it myself. Me and my family, we were out of power for 3 days and had to stay at a family's house. Luckily, we were able to seek warm shelter with family. But yeah, I think with Encore, really all the utility companies throughout the state of Texas, they are regulated by the Public Utility Commission. And so if you're just not getting the type of responses that you need, you can file a complaint with the Public Utility Commission. And I would encourage you, if you're just not getting the appropriate type of responses, you're escalating within the company, you're just not getting those types of responses, there is a regulatory response that can be taken, and that's by filing a complaint with the Public Utility Commission. And thanks for your question.
Thank you, Representative Shaheen. Really appreciate that answer. The next question is for Juan with FEMA, and this is a very frequent question. We had a lot of questions about this. This is coming from Kevin in Frisco about what kind of damage qualifies for FEMA. Kevin, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate everyone taking this opportunity to answer questions. My question is specific to pool equipment. A lot of us here in Collin County have swimming pools, and it seems to be kind of that area that's a little bit an exception because it's not directly in our home. The insurance deductible is 1%, which is very high. And I'm just curious from FEMA if there is any aid or assistance for that type of damage that was done by the storm.
Thank you for the question, Kevin. FEMA's assistance is really focused on making sure your home is safe, sanitary, and secure. So if it is not necessary to keep your home safe and secure, it's likely not going to be an eligible expense under FEMA. Some other folks have been asking about landscaping, for example. That's not going to be an eligible expense. So expenses related to a swimming pool, I do not believe will be eligible for FEMA assistance. But that is why we bring to the table other federal agencies and partners. And this is where the Small Business Administration may come into play. So, and this is not just limited to something like pool or landscaping. So, for example, if you have a 5-bedroom home, but it's an empty nest, and you have, your children have all left, and it's just a couple, FEMA's assistance is going to be limited to 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and the general shared areas. So if you have damage in bedrooms 2, 3, and 4 that are guest bedrooms, those repairs are not going to be eligible for FEMA assistance either. But that is why we have partners like the Small Business Administration that provide low-interest disaster loans to help where FEMA cannot. And I don't know if Sushil, if you want to speak to that at all.
I do, as a matter of Juan. Kevin, thanks for the question. Your deductible for 1% is covered by the SBA. If the cash flow is there, the amortization would be at 1.25% for a maximum 30-year time frame. On a case-by-case basis, landscaping, pools, and those types of items are part of what the SBA could potentially lend itself to. As Juan mentioned, their role is to make the home safe, secure, sanitary condition. Our role is repair, recovery, and rehabilitate. And together, SBA and FEMA return the homeowner, the renter, the business owner back to its rightful state. In other words, the unmet needs created by the disaster is taken care of. Again, the way you would do that is disasterloanassistance.sba.gov. That's the way to apply for it. Or call 1-800-659-2955. Thank you for your question.
That's great, and really, what's really great about these telephone town halls is having these different agencies on here to explain how one begins and the next, how one ends and the next begins. And so I really appreciate the FEMA and SBA having some great representatives to explain these things. If you have a question, hit *3 on your phone. We may not get to it tonight, but we certainly will get to it and make sure you get an answer of some kind. But if you got a question, again, for me, Van Taylor, your U.S. Congressman, for State Representative Matt Shaheen, for FEMA or the SBA, hit *3. We can definitely get you an answer. So our next question is for State Representative Matt Shaheen, and this is Joshua from Lavon, has a question about oversight of critical infrastructure. And I will say, actually, next week, the Energy and Commerce Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives will have a hearing on this. I will say Congress moves a little bit slower. As you've already heard, State Representative Shaheen said they were moving legislation out of committee today. They've already had their hearing, so Congress is a little bit slower on these things. But don't worry, your state legislature is on the job. So, Joshua, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, first, thank you, Representative Shaheen and Congressman Taylor, for y'all doing this. Every time you do it, Congressman Taylor, it is really awesome. And so thank you for actually doing it. But my question more directly for Representative Shaheen is I guess kind of a question to ask about, was there a breakdown in oversight in which, generating units were not properly registered as critical infrastructure? And in addition to, like, the entities that supported those generating units being registered as well, and if there was a breakdown, has there been, oversight put in place to ensure there's checks and balances, just to ensure that, if we're put in those situations again, and ERCOT's got to break down and go to a rolling blackout, that we're not blacking out, one, the generating units, and two, the but two, also those entities that are necessary to support their functions. And so those are my questions. And thank you all again so much for doing this.
You bet, Joshua. Thank you for your question, and I can tell you've been paying particular attention to either the news or our specific hearings. Yes, there was a breakdown in oversight, and you articulated really well what happened. There were some of the gas companies that provide gas to the generating plants, the power plants. They were not labeled as critical infrastructure, and so the utility companies, in shedding the load or turning off electricity so that the grid didn't go down, they actually shut off the power to the gas companies that provide the gas to the power generation companies. And they need the electricity, obviously, because they have compressors that drive the gas through the pipe. So it sounds incredibly silly. Again, I go back to those emergency operation plans that I don't think were well executed at all. They didn't do a sufficient job testing those. That's when you uncover these types of issues, right? Like not having your critical infrastructure identified. There is a piece of separate legislation that I didn't mention earlier to ensure that does happen. But I have to tell you, I'm disappointed that we even had to pass legislation like that. I would hold both ERCOT and the Public Utility Commission accountable for not, enforcing those types of requirements. So I think the utility companies, they did a pretty good job with respect to identifying hospitals and, of course, the airport, police stations and fire stations as critical infrastructure, so their power was never cut off. But again, something silly like the gas company that's providing the gas to the power generation companies, for that to happen, quite frankly, is an embarrassment. So there's some legislation, I think I already mentioned, about ERCOT with respect to strengthening the structure of ERCOT, make sure that they do a better job of oversight. There's also some legislation around the Public Utility Commission as well. I will tell you also that those that are accountable for this have all resigned. You have the members of the Public Utility Commission, including the chairman, that have resigned. Then you also have the CEO of ERCOT that has also resigned as well. So there will be replacements in the near future. And so a lot's going on, both legislatively as well as holding people accountable, and as well as putting people in place that, quite frankly, will do a better job of execution. But Joshua, thanks for your question. That was really good. Thank you.
And Joshua, I just want to thank you and everybody else who's on the line right now. There are hundreds of people from across the district that are listening, and I think this is really great. And Representative Shaheen, really appreciate your hard work in the recovery effort. I will personally attest that Matt and I were on the phone frequently during the freeze, and it was all hands on deck to try to manage this. And I know that we were dealing with problems like, hey, if I don't get power to pump station number 4 in the next 4 hours, it's going to freeze, and I'm not going to have water for 10,000 citizens in my community. And getting on the phone and making sure that we were powering critical infrastructure to try to minimize the damage and the suffering that we all went through during this. Before our next question, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that my office, your congressional office, is open for you. And so if you've got a question that is, unrelated to FEMA or the SBA, or related to FEMA and the SBA. So if you got a problem with Social Security, you've got a problem getting your combat military records, you've got a problem with immigration, you've got a problem getting a passport, you've got a problem with disability, reach out to my office. We're here in Plano, Texas. We're here to work for you. We work hard. We try to do the best we can to resolve your problem. Our number is 972-202-4201. And again, it's a tremendous privilege to serve you, and we understand the importance of making sure that you get things that you need from the federal government. And if you've got a question, hit *3 on your phone, and we will get to that. So our next question is for the SBA, and so Sushil, I think, is the best person to answer that. And so it's Robin from Dallas. You have a question about coverage from the SBA. Robin, are you on the line?
I am.
Hi, Robin.
So my question is, if you own a business in Collin County, Dallas County, what are the options, if any, for recovery for loss of income due to the fact that we had to be closed since we had no power at our businesses? I own some clothing stores, and we were closed for a week on top of COVID pandemic in February because we weren't able to get power in any of our locations, so obviously we couldn't operate. I know, based on what I've heard from the questions so far, that it sounds like FEMA isn't going to provide grant coverage for something like that, and of course we've gone through our own insurance. But is the SBA providing any grants, or is it only low interest loans?
The Small Business Administration only offers low interest rate disaster loans as low as 3% fixed over a 30-year term. And once you check with the insurance company and they take care of the losses potentially, or the business interruption, that's the word I was looking for, we will take care of the remaining portion. So what we would do is we would benchmark your income and expenses corresponding period into last year and see what bills you weren't able to pay as a result of the disruption. And that's the sums of money that you would amortize over a 30-year time frame. The grants portion that you mentioned with the SBA was very limited to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance, which was terminated and or appropriated fully as of the 11th of July last year as part of the overall CARES Act. But right now, all of our programs are expected to have repayment. So if you were to borrow, you would be expected to repay the loan.
Hey, thank you for that. And I just wanted to just offer a word of praise for FEMA and the SBA. They have had an incredible year. You think about the PPP plan, that pumped hundreds of billions of dollars into our economy through the PPP plan. The SBA was never designed to do that, but they absolutely jumped through hoops and really rescued a lot of great small businesses. And so I'm grateful to them for really working hard on an incredibly difficult project that was really just thrown at them. And I know it was challenging. I know I've helped a lot of people in our community to get through that, but just wanted to thank the SBA and FEMA for the great work that they've done through COVID. And obviously the Winter Storm Uri added a whole another wrinkle. And to that end, our next question actually is for the SBA and FEMA. And so I'm not sure what order you guys want to answer this in, so I'll let you figure that out. But we've got Brenda from Frisco, and she's asking a question about she's got an apartment that she operates, and she's trying to figure out who she should go to first. So I'm gonna let Brenda. Are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much, and thank
Sure.
you for
Go ahead.
being a part of this. Yeah, my question is, I work from home, and I have an apartment. I have a small business here. There was sprinkler damage and windows damage where the frost actually came inside my apartment, sheetrock damage. So how does that apply if I have home insurance? Is the apartment taking care of that, and it's nothing that I need to do?
Juan, do you want to take that first?
Yes, certainly. So I would recommend that you go ahead and apply with FEMA, which again is available at disasterassistance.gov. And go ahead and indicate that you had damage to your dwelling and property. And so since you don't own the actual dwelling itself, the apartment company will need to take care of the repairs there. But if your property, your clothes, your appliances were damaged, you may be eligible for FEMA assistance to pay for your property that was damaged. We'll probably refer you to the Small Business Administration, in particular, if you had sustained economic damage as a result of the freeze. And so you may be eligible for some FEMA assistance, and then also for some small business assistance. And I would recommend that you apply. And come on, Mr. Shield, sorry.
No problems at all, my friend. To the caller who asked the question, if you own the apartment as an owner and operating a business as the owner of the apartment and the business itself, you potentially can borrow money from the Small Business Administration as a business owner, right? And as Juan alluded to, if you are a renter, up to $40,000 worth of personal property losses minus insurance is what the SBA would potentially cover, 1.25% fixed over a 30-year term. Now, the business side of the equation that you mentioned, you run a business out of your apartments. That would be a separate category, and you can potentially borrow up to $2 million for any type of economic injury that you've suffered, which basically means that you can pay your bills on time because your revenue didn't come in, and or physical damages. And again, that's a very complex calculation, what percentage of your apartment you use for tax purposes. So without getting into the weeds, please register with FEMA, get your 9-digit number, apply with the SBA. Congressman, on a separate note, for the callers who are on this call and for folks that you're interacting with, on average for this disaster, 65% of registrants with FEMA are being referred over to the SBA. So almost 2/3. And if the applicant chooses not to apply with the SBA, the recovery process stops right there. And what a shame that is. Texas Department of Emergency Management went to FEMA with the mindset of, hey, the ability for us to absorb these losses is outside the scope of the state, so would you please help us federal partners? And if the federal partners are here, it's incumbent upon the folks on the call and in the area to apply with the SBA, register with FEMA, and make sure that you get those funds, which you're rightfully entitled to meet the unmet needs created by the disaster. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate having two great experts on the line to really help us understand these. This next question is a really tough story. Marion from Plano has a question about assistance. She is unfortunately homeless, and I just wanted to kind of jump out in front of that and say my office is going to reach out to you. We're going to try to help you find additional resources beyond the ones that we're discussing here on this call. And I just want to, again, anybody who needs help, reach out to my office. If it's not a federal government thing, we will help you figure out where to go and get help. So, Marion from Plano, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, yes, I was, my apartment was rendered uninhabitable due to the extent of the damage, and so I had to move out. They didn't even tell me that the pipes had burst, so they called to tell me the water was turned on in the apartment, and I was at the grocery store, so I actually bought extra food so I could make some soup. And when I opened the front door, of course, I saw my sofa in the living room sitting in water, my mother's dining table sitting in the living room with water sitting on it. And so I just sprang into action and started to get my clothing into my car to avoid mildew. And by 8 o'clock, my son-in-law's mother came and helped me bring those clothes to her home, and we went back for my valuables and some other things of my mother's that I wanted to keep. We also covered, well, water was still coming from the ceiling, and the carpet in the living room was squishing, so we covered the remaining furniture I had and took valuables out that night. Now, I fell on my way out, and since I sprained my ankle, I fell directly on my right shoulder. Yeah, well, this gets better. And I ended up not being able to use my shoulder or my arm, my right arm, for the extent of those. Now, I did go to the emergency room because I went to, the next day, I tried to go to an urgent care. Well, they don't take Medicare. I'm 65. And went to two places, and then I called a third. And I ended up going to the emergency room, and they did a marvelous job, a very thorough check. I did not break a bone. I did not sprain. I mean, I sprained my ankle, but I didn't break or fracture a bone. So I have been getting some therapy for my arm and wearing a boot. But so that was a blessing that nothing was broken. And I am staying, of course, as much as possible with my son-in-law's mother. But she does have cats, which does cause asthma for me. And I'm a cancer survivor, so that's an area that I have has been affected from the chemotherapy. It was being very sensitive to things with asthma, getting asthma from chemicals or such.
That's an incredible story. So so just, from what kind of assistance is available for someone like this beyond my office reaching out? I mean, just SBA, FEMA, what can you guys do to help?
So, Congressman, this is Juan with FEMA.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Sushil. I just wanted to mention, sorry about the nightmare situation you lived through, but you would be eligible for things like rental assistance. So you might be eligible for money to pay for an apartment, so you don't have to stay with your mother-in-law or sister-in-law or with a friend while you're dealing with your apartment you're finding a safe apartment to live in. And then your other damaged property may be eligible for reimbursement as well. So again, I would recommend registering with FEMA, disasterassistance.gov, and looking, mentioning all of the situation you're dealing with, that your home is uninhabitable, that you have listing out all the property that was damaged as a result of it. And so you may be eligible for FEMA assistance to cover, again, rental property for another place to live, and to pay for the damaged furniture and loss of clothes, that sort of thing, televisions, since you're looking at a pretty substantial loss there. And then again, you may be referred to SBA for some additional assistance. And Sushil, there you go.
Thank you, Juan. Again, what an incredible story that you've shared. My heart goes out to you and your situation. Please register with FEMA, as Juan mentioned, and apply with the SBA. Here's what happens when you apply with the SBA. If for some reason we're not able to assist you with a low interest rate disaster loan at 1.25%, amortized over a 30-year time frame, we will refer you back to the other needs assistance, which is a FEMA-based program for again, grant-based. So please register with FEMA, apply with us, and find out what options are available. And Godspeed in your recovery.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is going to be the last question. Votes have been called, so I've actually got to get to the floor of the House, U.S. House of Representatives for a vote. But I want to let you know at the very end of this, if you want to leave a voicemail for me, I encourage you to do that. And if you want me to personally contact you, I will do that. If it's for any of the other people on this call, we will route that message accordingly, if it's a voicemail, et cetera. So I just want to say thank you to having our experts. I think this is a really productive telephone town hall. I appreciate your participation and your time tonight. Again, this is Van Taylor. It's an incredible privilege to represent you. And actually, I'm going to actually get off the call, but I'm going to ask State Representative Matt Shaheen. Matt, if you could take a few minutes just to close us out and just share anything else in terms of what you're doing in the state legislature to try to work through this. I'm really proud of the hard work that you have put in to go through and solve this problem. I'm really proud of the Texas legislature. I know you're working on a bipartisan basis to solve problems. I wish Washington could take a lesson from how the Austin legislature works, and it works extremely well for the people of Texas, and I know you guys are on this. So, Matt, I'm going to let you close us out. I'm going to go run off and vote.
All right. Well, Congressman Taylor, thank you. Thank you for representing us so well. And, just everybody, look, I mean, what happened a number of weeks ago was completely unacceptable, and I think we're finishing off with the story that we just heard as far as just the real impact. I'll tell you that I spent a significant amount of time on the phone during those days where so many were out of power, including myself, and just talking to different mayors and our county elected officials, spoke to the Speaker of the House, talked to several of the executives from utility companies, just to make sure that things were given a priority as far as recovery. But we got to make sure that this just doesn't happen again in our state. And so the work's not done, right? We're taking actions to ensure that these widespread outages don't happen again. And Congressman Taylor's right. We do things in more of a bipartisan fashion down in the Texas legislature. So both Republicans and Democrats are determined to work together to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And, during that week, that just incredibly difficult week, the community really came together. The Collin County community. I visited so many different warming centers, whether it was different churches. Me and my wife visited. We visited the Salvation Army, and the community really came together and provided shelter for those that became homeless all of a sudden, those that needed food. It's just a wonderful display of love and compassion in our community for those that really needed it during those times. So know that we are still working down here in Austin. If there's anything that I can do for anybody with respect to state issues, if you're having any type of issue with a state agency, whether that's unemployment and the Texas Workforce Commission, if there's issues with education, what have you, that are the purview of the state, feel free to give me a call. Our Capitol office number down in Austin is 512-463-0594. We're here to help you, and we'll do all we can to help you. With that, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for participating in this. I really enjoy the opportunities to engage with our constituents during this evening. So thank you, everybody, very much. Take care. God bless.